All right, so last night's VP debate, huh? Want to get past those headlines and sound like a total pro at the water cooler this morning.
Absolutely. It was a crucial night for both campaigns, especially this close to the election.
Yeah, with the elections so tight, every little thing matters. We're talking about the future of the country here. And we're not just talking headlines here. We went deep into all the analysis and commentary, all the expert opinions to really break it down for you. The Walz-Vance showdown. What a night, right?
Definitely a night for the history books. Both Walz and Vance had a lot riding on their performance. Huge pressure to win over those undecided voters.
For sure, and especially with the polls showing just how close this election is. So the stakes were high for everyone, but particularly for Walz and Vance. They had to deliver for their running mates, Harris and Trump.
Absolutely, and you can't underestimate the impact of Vance going into this thing as, well, let's just say, a historically unpopular VP pick.
Wow, really? I knew he wasn't exactly a fan favorite, but had no idea it was that bad.
Oh yeah, the polls have been brutal. It's been fascinating to watch it play out.
So that context makes his performance even more interesting, right? Did he play it safe, knowing how people feel about him, or did he just go for it?
Well, there was that one moment, the one everyone's talking about the 2020 election.
Oh, right, when Walz straight up asked him if he believed Trump won.
Exactly, and Vance just dodged it completely. Said he was focused on the future, not the past.
Seemed pretty calculated, right? Like
Yeah.
trying to avoid alienating Trump's base. What do you think? Was that the strategy there?
It's a fine line he's walking. On the one hand, you've got a large portion of Trump's base who are convinced the election was stolen. He can't afford to alienate them.
Right, right.
But then on the other hand, if he goes too far and openly questions the 2020 election, he risks turning off those moderate voters who might still be on the fence.
So it's a balancing act.
Exactly. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, especially if the Trump-Harris ticket actually wins. Will this looking ahead strategy hold up?
Yeah, if they're in power, can they really just keep dodging questions about the legitimacy of the election they won? Seems like a recipe for disaster, or at least a whole lot of controversy.
You hit the nail on the head. It raises some serious questions about how a potential Trump-Harris administration would govern. Would they respect democratic norms? Would they acknowledge future election results, even if their opponents won?
Big questions. And speaking of big, important issues, we have to talk about gun control. Last night, things got really personal really fast.
Absolutely. Walz sharing that his son actually witnessed a school shooting. I mean, that's heavy stuff.
It really brought home the reality of gun violence, the fear and anger that so many parents live with every day.
Yeah, you could just feel the emotion in his voice. It was powerful.
Definitely. And then you contrast that with Vance's response, which felt much more, I don't know, by the book. Thoughts and prayers, talk about school safety, but not a whole lot of concrete solutions for actual gun control.
I think that really reflects the deep divide in this country when it comes to guns. On the one hand, you have folks demanding stricter gun control laws, background checks, the whole 9 yards. And on the other hand, you have people focusing on mental health, fortifying schools, that kind of thing.
It's a debate that just keeps going around and around, doesn't it?
Sadly, yeah. It often feels like we're stuck in this cycle of tragedy followed by inaction. And I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think either side is entirely right or entirely wrong here.
That's complicated.
Yeah, it's tough,
That
How do you solve a problem like gun violence? It's so ingrained in our society. But I think Walz bringing up his son, it really highlights how candidates are using these personal stories more and more to connect with voters, trying to cut through the noise with something real, something relatable.
Yeah, it makes you think about those later moments from the debate that went viral. Like, remember when Walz was wearing those Taylor Swift friendship bracelets?
How could I forget? Social media went crazy for that.
Right. I mean, it was brilliant. A total nod to Swift's endorsement, and a pretty savvy way to connect with younger voters, too.
Absolutely. Politicians have been trying to crack the code of appealing to young people for ages. And it used to be all about like awkward photo ops at concerts and stuff. But now it's about those subtle nods, those shared cultural moments, like wearing a friendship bracelet. It's a way of saying, hey, I get you, I'm one of you.
Yeah, it's like they're speaking the same language. And it makes you think about Vance's comments from a few weeks back about, prominent Democrats being childless cat ladies.
Oh, yeah, that didn't go over so well.
Not really, no. But the Walz campaign, they turned it into merch. I mean, you gotta admire the hustle.
Oh, yeah, they're capitalizing on that for sure. Smart move. It kind of neutralizes the attack, makes it seem less serious. And at the same time, they're signaling to a specific demographic, hey, we hear you, we see you.
It's like they're saying, You want to come at us, we're going to turn it into a T-shirt.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so moving on to something, well, a little less lighthearted. I have to ask about Vance's defense of Trump's concepts for a healthcare plan. Concepts. What does that even mean?
I think a lot of people were scratching their heads at that one.
Yeah.
Concepts, right? Like, where are the details?
It's like saying, I have a concept for a car that runs on water, but not actually explaining how it works.
Exactly, exactly. And this isn't the first time we've seen this kind of vague approach from Trump when it comes to policy. He's all about the big picture, the broad strokes.
Right, but the devil's in the details, isn't it?
Absolutely, and voters know that. They want to know what these concepts actually mean for them. How's it going to affect their health care, their bottom line? And when you don't provide those details, it creates doubt. It creates uncertainty.
Makes you wonder if there are actually any details, Or is it just smoke and mirrors?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And speaking of things that make you wonder, can we talk about the whole Walz and Tiananmen Square thing? That was awkward, to say the least.
Yeah, his comments about being in Hong Kong during the protests, it was not a good look. I mean, he claims it was an honest mistake, a slip of the tongue.
Right, right.
But it plays into this narrative that's been building, this idea that he's not always truthful, that he plays fast and loose with the facts.
Which is pretty damaging, especially in this political climate where trust is, like, the most valuable currency.
Exactly. And it gave Vance some serious ammunition, especially when the topic shifted to immigration. Remember that whole back and forth?
Oh, yeah. Was Walz basically called out Vance and Trump for, those claims they made about Haitian immigrants, which, by the way, were completely unfounded.
Totally baseless.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the disturbing trend in this election and others, this willingness to use misinformation, to exploit people's fears, all in the name of winning.
It's scary, honestly, and it makes you wonder how much is strategy and how much is just like a complete disregard for the truth.
That's the question, isn't it?
It's like, what are we even doing here?
I hear you. It's frustrating. It's disheartening. But I think it's important to remember that even in the midst of all the noise, the spin, the outright lies, there are still people out there who want to have real conversations, who want to engage with the issues in a thoughtful and respectful way. We can't let the negativity win.
Yeah, and it's like, even with all that other stuff, all the, the personal attacks and the misinformation, we still haven't even touched on, like, the biggest issue of all, right?
Yeah.
The economy.
Right, because no matter what side of the aisle you're on, everyone's feeling the pinch these days.
Exactly. Inflation is hitting everyone's wallets, and it's hard to ignore.
Absolutely. And last night we saw both candidates trying to address those very real anxieties, each with their own economic vision, their own plan to get us back on track.
Yeah. Vance seemed to be doubling down on what the Trump administration did, stay the course kind of thing. While Walz, he was all about a new direction, a fresh start. Did either of those resonate with you?
Well, what's interesting here is how both of them were playing to two different audiences at the same time.
Ah, okay, I see what you mean.
They have to keep their baits happy, right?
Yeah.
But they also need to win over those undecided voters.
Right, right.
So on the one hand, you have Vance, he's talking up the successes of the Trump years, which, that's going to appeal to his base.
Sure.
But then at the same time, he's also trying to paint this picture of continued prosperity if he and Trump are elected, hoping to sway those voters who might be considering Walz.
Okay, and what about Walz?
Well, he's got a different challenge altogether. He has to acknowledge the very real economic struggles that people are facing. He can't just gloss over that.
Nope.
But he also can't seem too negative, too doom and gloom, because that might scare off those voters who are hesitant about change. They might be unhappy with the status quo, but they're not sure if they're ready for a complete overhaul.
So it's about finding that balance.
Exactly.
Make people feel heard, but also offer them some hope.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, I think it comes down to trust. Who do voters trust more to lead us through these uncertain economic times?
Yeah.
Do they want to stick with what they know, even if it's not perfect? Or are they ready for a change, even if it comes with some risks?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a question that millions of Americans will be wrestling with over these next few weeks. With the election just around the corner, every decision, every vote feels so consequential. It's easy to get caught up in the horse race, who's ahead in the polls, who had the best singer in the debate.
It's true. It's the political theater that sucks us all in.
But we can't lose sight of the bigger picture here. This election is about more than just who occupies the White House for the next 4 years. It's about the direction of our country, the values we prioritize, the future we want to build. And it's an important reminder that In a democracy, we, the people, have the power to shape that future.
Well said. So as we navigate these next few crucial weeks, let's all try to cut through the noise a little bit. Let's engage in thoughtful, respectful dialogue, even with those we might disagree with. Let's challenge our own assumptions and be open to learning from others.
Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, right? We're all Americans, trying to build a better future for ourselves, our families, our communities.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And I think by having these kinds of conversations, by staying informed, by holding our leaders accountable, we can actually make a difference. We can create a brighter future for all Americans.
This deep dive has been amazing. Thank you so much for breaking it all down for us.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah.
And to everyone listening, remember to stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, make your voice heard.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another look behind the curtain of a current event that matters. Until then, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going.